Hey guys, welcome to the 18th episode of the Learning Podcast. And if you aren't sure, it's a Singaporean podcast dedicated to learning something new from every single guest on this show. And to be honest, I'm extremely nervous right now because today I have by far the biggest guest I have on this podcast and probably the biggest podcast guest I'll ever have in my podcast. His name is Mr. Zainal, and before I read his Wikipedia bio, right, he has a Wikipedia page, right? I just want to share why you might want to listen to this podcast. There are two reasons. Firstly, I think the discussion for Singaporean youth to be prepared for the real world is quite an important one because I myself have just graduated from NUS, and sometimes I think that I would appreciate it if I could have had some advice back then that would be useful, because I think that having worked for about 10 months right now, I think the working world is very different from the studying world. So in that sense, I feel that the guest that I have with me today, he has over 30 to 40 years of experience. He was in the education field for about 20 years. He was a principal, he was a teacher, he's an educator, he's a politician, he is a member of parliament, MP, he is a member of parliament. He actually plays a role in the Singapore government itself, and his name is Mr. Zainal. Mr. Zainal, thanks so much for taking the time to be on this podcast.
Hi JJ, you're most welcome. I think this is something that I look forward to doing because being an educator myself, I think it's good if I can share certain things that I have learned being in the private sector, being in the working world, which I believe many of the youth could actually learn from.
So thanks so much. The second reason why I think that this podcast would be useful, because Mr. Zainal himself has experience with dealing on a macro scale with the kind of policies that might impact us, whether it's implementing policies on businesses, onto the kind of, let's say, benefits or contracts within our job contracts itself. So the second thing that I really want to talk to him about is in terms of the kind of red flags that Singaporean youth should take note of before taking on a full-time job, because I think that having that first job is quite critical in my opinion as a fresh graduate. So Mr. Zainal, for those listeners that don't know who you are, right, because I post this on LinkedIn, it's like an international audience, mostly university students and business owners. Could you give a short introduction about yourself before I read your Wikipedia bio?
I was in the education sector for 20 years before I joined politics. And then I got myself involved with the National Trade Union Congress. Currently, I'm the Assistant Secretary General, and part of my portfolio is to actually oversee issues concerning low-wage workers. I also spearhead the CSR, the community service program, where I do fundraising to help union members who are low-income earners. On top of that, I also oversee certain efforts to boost the income of low-wage workers.
So on a very general note, right, what kind of advice would you give to Singaporeans that are currently studying, Singaporean youths in general, onto the kind of tangible things that they should do in preparing themselves for the real working world?
In the course of my work, I do interview potential candidates to be part of our organization. And I believe that in order for youth to stand out during a job interview, the preparation doesn't start when they graduate. It should start when they are still in school. For example, do not underestimate the importance of having a co-curricular activity. If you are in a secondary school, I would encourage you to be involved in co-curricular activity, hold positions of responsibility if it is offered to you, and this should extend even when you are in junior college or when you are in a tertiary institution. Having that itself is not enough. It is a good start. Youth should also venture out to actually widen their network. They could join voluntary organizations organization do community service. The reason why I say this is because when I receive job applicants, I think your soft skills will make you stand out from the other applicants. You just cannot rely on your academic results. I think as employers, we want to look for employees who could actually interact with people of different age group. We want employees that could actually communicate well with others, demonstrate empathy. And the best way to demonstrate you have all this is to show your involvement in school as well as outside school, beyond the academic. There are many opportunities out there. If you are staying, for example, in a HDB estate, you could go to the nearest community center. You can join the youth network, or you could actually volunteer to be part of the youth group in your residence network. In fact, I believe there are many other organizations that welcome youth to volunteer their time. And I think if you could demonstrate this during the job interview to highlight your soft skills, that will make you stand apart from the other applicants.
On that note, right, when I first met Mr. Zainal, he was telling me that during the Meet the People session, you meet undergraduates that simply send out like hundreds of resumes out, right, but not getting a tangible reply, right? So my hypothesis, right, beyond to just sending out applications, I think sending out the hundreds of resumes is a symptom of undergraduates, or at least students or Singaporean youth in general, not having a clear picture of what they want to do. That's why they resort in such a case. I myself, I can say that I only really decided what I wanted after tasting and testing so many things in my last year of university. So when it comes to your experience in making Singaporean youth discover what they want, then I guess it's like a cycle that begins there. But in terms of advice you could give in terms of how can Singaporean youths better know what they want exactly for their future in their career?
I think for youth to discover their passion, it is not something which is easy. It really depends on the exposure that you have. And that is the reason why I believe you should expose yourself to as many learning opportunities out there, so that you could actually eventually discover your passion. Your passion not necessarily be playing video games, or your passion need not necessarily be in a particular area that you are really interested in. And I think if you expose yourself to varying experience through volunteerism, perhaps you can feel those that actually give the kind of job satisfaction and give you the purpose in life. Warren Buffett have a very simple rule where he will ask, if you want to discover your passion, list 25 things that you like to do. All right. After listing these 25 things, cross out 20.
Cross out 20.
Cross out 20, and perhaps the remaining 5 is something which you are really passionate about. Because there are many jobs out there that can cater to your passion. Some people, they have immense satisfaction in terms of helping others, making a difference. Some people, they have immense satisfaction in terms of accumulating wealth. There is no right or wrong answer. But at the end of the day, you need to do something which will make you want to come to work every day. The moment you find yourself dragging yourself into doing something, then I think that is not something which you are passionate about. But I also have to alert you that regardless of whatever job that you do, there will be tasks which are very mundane, which are very boring, but unfortunately they are necessary tasks in order for you to achieve the bigger goal. I recall when I was a teacher, I hate the administrative work, but it is something that must be done. But really, at the end of the day, what gives me the greatest satisfaction is to see my students grow, becoming responsible adults. Or even in my current work with NTUC, I derive immense satisfaction to work with my team to make a difference in the life of low-wage workers. Because currently we are trying to push for low-wage workers in the cleaning sector, security as a landscape sector to get better wages. And that is something which not everybody is passionate about, but if it is an area that you want to make a difference in the life of others, then that is an area that you can pursue.
Can you tell me the story of how you transition from being an educator into being an assistant into your work at NTUC in terms of wanting to make that kind of difference where most people might not be too passionate or empathetic?
I come from a low-income family. My father held 3 jobs in order to support the family. As a teenager, I seldom see my father. I remember when I woke up early in the morning, my father is out for work. When I come back, when I'm asleep, then my father will actually return from his work. He held 3 jobs. He was doing street cleaning. Then after he does that job of street cleaning, he will then do his second job as a garbage collector at Tekka Market. And when he finish that job, he will come back home, rest for a short while, have lunch. Then at 3 o'clock, he will set up to work as a security guard. Last time we call it security guard instead of security officer. And by the time he comes back, it was at 11 p.m. And I see education as a chance for me to actually move up the social ladder, to make actually a difference in my life. And when I was when I was an undergraduate, I really wanted to be a teacher because I believe education was a great social leveler, and that was the reason why I went into teaching, really to help pupils move up the social ladder. Eventually, after 20 years in the education service, I was actually invited to be part of the PAP party to actually join politics. It wasn't an easy decision. Frankly speaking, I was doing relatively well in education. I was a superintendent then, but I took upon it as a challenge to see whether I could do something different beyond the education sector. In the past, I see myself helping the students. Now, what can I do to help the parents? So when I was in NTUC, I think speaking up for the low-wage workers came naturally to me. I could actually empathize with the situation that they were in, given my background, and I could actually speak on issues concerning them with conviction, and it's something that we need to do. But being able to see at the more macro level, there are some policies, while it might be popular, but it might not be the best policy. For example, if you notice, there has been a lot of talks about minimum wage.
Yes.
Right? But in the work that we do, we know there are downside, there are pros and cons to minimum wage. At this point of time, the alternative that we have would be a win-win to the business community, to the workers. NTUC, we stand by this belief that the best employment is the best welfare for the workers, and that is how I actually got involved in my current work now.
So when it comes to welfare for workers, right, the second topic I would like to dive deeper on, in terms of a Singaporean youth taking up their first job or not being taken advantage of by businesses, right? I know such information is really out there, but what are the kind of macro things that like Singaporean youths like me should take note of before signing a job?
I think for youth, especially those just graduating from polytechnic, from university, your first job is very important. Having said that, I think you should also be very mindful of what is actually the salary that is being offered to you. If you take up a first job that offers a salary below what is being paid in the market, then you would find a bit more challenging to get a second job with a better salary offer.
Okay.
I mean, if the current market is, let's say, at around 3,300 and you accept a first job which is paying you 2,200 or 2,300.
So looking at the compensation package is one of the more important things?
Yes, that is one. I think the second aspect that youth need to watch out for, I think in your haste to secure that employment, watch out for the terms and conditions of your employment. Because sometime in their haste to secure a job, they might sign an employment contract which might have a certain unfair employment clauses. One of these employment clauses will be with regards to you terminating your employment or you wanting to leave the company. In the course of my work, I have come across very punitive employment clauses where the company would expect you to compensate them back a certain amount for
every single day.
Yeah, I mean,
based on how many
I've seen a contract where the company expect the employee to compensate $50 per day for every unfulfilled duration of the employment contract. I've seen employment contract where there's restraint of trade. If you resign from the company wouldn't allow you to join another company in a similar trade. So these are very important things that I think youth need to watch out for. But again, I stress again, one of the best ways by which you can get good employers is actually to check out with your friends. Get your friends to recommend, or if it is not your friends, get the network that you have established to open doors for you. A lot of employers, we tend to give a preference to people that are being recommended by someone that we know. It will give you an edge over other applicants. That is the reason why I keep on emphasizing build your network. The stronger your network, the more opportunities that will be open to you.
When it comes to unfair clauses in your vast experience, is there really a difference between how you would say Singaporean companies or international companies have such differences? The reason why I ask it because I just have that top line mindset that Singaporean companies in general tends to be a little bit more stingy when it comes to such aspect, or because my experience has only been in international companies. But in your vast experience, is there really a difference? At the end of the day, there's still that law that you have to provide certain manpower benefits to your employees at the end of the day. But is there a difference from your experience?
Generally, we notice bigger companies tend to be much better in terms of their adherence to the employment laws, in terms of the Employment Act. And they have very good HR practices. They are able to hire HR people that are very competent. Generally, you are quite safe if you are employed by some of these bigger companies, regardless whether they are Singapore-based or whether they are foreign companies. The one that you need to watch out are really the small and medium enterprises. I think small and medium enterprises, because of the very competitive nature of the business, they might have add certain clauses, not to your advantage, but really to protect their interests. But I think an easy way out for young graduates is to actually join NTUC. Because if you join NTUC...
Sorry, NTUC as in meaning NTUC, or is there a...
NTUC, when I talk about NTUC, I'm talking about the National Trade Union Congress. Because NTUC, we have two groups. One would be the social enterprises, where you have NTUC NTUC Income, NTUC Fair Price, NTUC First School. These are our social enterprise.
Okay.
The one that I'm referring to, the NTUC Union, where as an NTUC member, you will enjoy a certain privileges.
So it's all these SMEs within this NTUC union, is it?
Some companies, they are unionized companies.
Okay.
If they are unionized company, it means that we could actually represent the workers should there be any workplace grievance, and the management will give us the audience. But some companies are not unionized companies. A lot of SMEs, they
so
are
do you
not
mind if I ask you what's
unionized.
unionized?
Okay, when I talk about unionized company, it means that the company gives the union recognition as representing their employees.
Oh, okay.
If it is not unionized, it means that there is no formal agreement that the company recognize any representation from the union. So many of the big companies in Singapore, they are unionized. So if you look even in the civil service sector, we have the AUPE, which stands for Amalgamated Union of Public Employees, okay, AUPE.
Okay.
So if you are in the government sector, if you join the union, AUPE is the union that would represent you.
Okay.
The union representation is very important. The reason I say this, even if the company is not unionized, if you have a workplace grievance, you could actually contact the union, and the union could actually advise you. Or even if the company is not unionized, we can even write to the company to tell the company whether what they're doing is within the confines of the Employment Act, or they breaching any Employment Act. And many of these companies, usually they will listen to us because at the end of the day, if they are in the wrong, they would like to rectify it. But in order for you to get that assistance, you have to be a union member.
So let's say if I'm a small SME business owner, right, I can register to be unionized my company with NTUC in that sense? Is that how it works?
It's a bit more technical than that. If
on a
you,
macro,
if you are a business owner, SME business owner, if you want to be unionized, we will be more than welcome to.
What are the conditions?
Actually,
what are the prerequisites?
Actually, there isn't much prerequisite. But the main thing is that we will give you a form, and you need to acknowledge the form to tell us a declaration that you recognize that your employees are actually represented by that union, and then you must be open to have negotiation when it comes to wages, what we call the collective agreement.
Okay, so it's very technical here, right? I would like to change gears in a while. Can you tell me a story, right? A story that has made you think to yourself that this is the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. A particular story that strikes out to you in your, I would say, time in as a teacher and your time in NTUC.
I think when I left education service, when I joined the union, what struck me most was actually the wages earned by the cleaners at that point of time. I recall my father basically was working as a cleaner, and he was earning around $600 to $700 per month.
How many hours
and I'm talking about that was like 25 years ago.
Okay.
All right. And I was very surprised that how come the cleaners are still earning that kind of salary? They're only being paid $700 to $800. So when I delve into it further, then I realized it is because of the nature of the business. It is an outsourced business where you have Peter Drucker. I even wrote a blog about it. And it created a big hoo-ha discussion, because Peter Drucker is a management guru. He was of the principle that you should concentrate on your core business, and you outsource. You buy services to those things which you need, but it is not your core business. So you outsource your cleaning services, you outsource your security
to whatever company that
services.
does all those subsidiary
And
stuff.
Unfortunately, when we start outsourcing, there is competitive bidding. Because of competitive bidding, in order for you to put in a very competitive bid, you will try to bid as low as possible. if you do get that tender, I usually notice it is usually at the expense of the salary and employment benefits that you can give to your workers. You cannot give your workers good wages because it will you will be outbidded.
And you won't have profit for yourself.
You won't have a profit for yourself. That was the reason we then started to see what we can do to actually make sure that companies, while they outsource, they do responsibly what we call best sourcing. So best sourcing wasn't enough. I always believe when I
what's best sourcing? In
best sourcing, where when you buy services, you need not necessarily give to the lowest price.
Okay.
You award to service provider that can give you at the best good quality at a reasonable price. So what we did was that I kind of believe at the end of the day, a lot of service providers of outsourced services, they want to pay good wages to the workers.
Yes.
But they also need assurance their competitors will do the same.
Yeah.
Likewise, service buyers, they want to buy services from a responsible company. But how do I know that my competitors are doing the same? That was the reason why we came up with the progressive wage model, where in terms of wages, the wages that you pay to the workers are relatively about the same. So if you want to compete in your tender, it cannot be based on who is able to pay the lowest wages, because the wages are controlled. But it must be based really on the quality of your service.
So right now, this is one policy that you have worked for.
So this is one area which, again, I received very good support from the minister. At that time, my SecGen was Secretary General Lim Swee Say. Then we had even DPM Taman. He was very supportive of us doing something concrete that would level up the wages of the low wage workers, and it's still work in progress. One thing about helping low wage workers, it is a race without a finishing line.
Yes.
All right, you have to keep on looking into areas where you think you could actually make a difference in their working conditions. Some of them are low-hanging fruits you could easily achieve. Some of them might require a policy tweaking in order to get it implemented and scale it up at the national level.
So right now, in terms of the additional areas that you are looking at, if you are allowed to share any details of it, like, because I know it's so challenging. What other current angles are you thinking of when it comes to helping low wage workers, aside from this minimum bidding right as of now?
I think at the end of the day, what we want to do is to help workers earn better wages, but it must be sustainable.
Yes.
And in order to make it sustainable, we have to help workers increase their productivity.
Yes.
And one ways by which we could increase workers' productivity is to actually ask them to go for upskilling.
Yes.
For example, if you are in the cleaning industry, security industry, upskilling could involve you learning how to use equipment that could actually increase your productivity. Upskilling could also mean taking position of greater responsibility. And then it would justify why higher wages should be paid to you.
Okay, I may sound like a devil advocate in that sense, because I feel that in our current generation, right, how I picked up all of this, how the guy behind the camera picked up what we are doing right now is really the internet, and we have really, at least from our opinion, taken an initiative. Of course, I know perhaps people from lower income workers, they have difficulties, they have bills to pay, they have families to feed, right? The question I have to myself is, how much should the state intervene in such a personal problem? Whereas, because in my opinion, I think it's you should take your own responsibility into upskilling yourself, because like you said, sustainable. We need things to be sustainable at the end of the day. My thought process is that how far would you go? Because in the end, you can't force someone to upskill themselves if they don't want to upskill. I know these are macro principles we're talking about, but on the macro, since the work of your impact is that much, right? What are your current thoughts on it?
I think the support given by the government to help low-wage workers upskill themselves is tremendous.
I do think so as well, yeah.
Because, for example, when you go for training, the amount of subsidy that is given would practically mean that you could actually attend these courses, and you only required to pay very little. Some of it might even be free for low income earners. That is one. But the challenge is really for workers to know what are some of the courses that they can go for to upskill themselves. And that is the reason why the government actually worked with the labor movement to set up the Employment and Employability Institute. Any worker who wish to get a better job, to upskill themselves, you could actually go for career counseling. You can go to Devan Nair Institute. There will be a career counselor that could actually advise you what are some of the training that you could actually take up so that it would improve your chances of getting a better job. At the end of the day, we cannot run away from the need to upskill ourselves. A lot of organizations, they are facing a lot of manpower crunch. There has been policies to reduce the intake of foreign workers. And the reason why we are reducing the intake of foreign workers, we want to actually force company to look at other ways of increasing productivity, automation, using more technology. And if companies were to embark on this automation, they must also have the assurance that the workers are also equipped with the necessary skills and knowledge to operate all these machinery. So to make it real for the workers, that is the reason my Secretary General, Chin Meng, he started this initiative of the union working with the company to set up company training committees. So in these company training committees, the union will work closely with the management to identify what are some of the new skill sets that the management would actually require to transform their business, and then provide the necessary training for the workers to equip them with the necessary competency. So we think we are progressing. We are progressing well. The challenge that I notice that I face with many low wage workers is really mindset change. Some of these change. Many of these low wage workers, they are quite elderly, and there's a lot of resistance with
adapting something new,
to attending something new. But in order to incentivize them to attend some of this training, we actually pack our progressive wage model with the training that they require. So for example, if you want to be a cleaner, you need to be equipped with at least 2 work skill qualification modules, WSQ modules. So at least for these workers, they know that after I have attended that training, when I have acquired new skills and competency, there is a possibility I will be able to earn better wages. Likewise, we are looking at the same thing for the other industries as well.
I see. Okay, this is very macro talk in a sense, right? I want to bring a conversation back to just university in general. There's a lot of discussion in a sense whereby, at least from my opinion, having entered the working world, I don't feel that university, in a sense, or NUS, I'll just say it, that it hasn't equipped me with enough tangible skill set to be prepared for the working world in a sense. And what do you think when people say that degrees are useless? And in a sense whereby it's really just a commodity, anyone on the street of Singapore technically has a degree, but what would you say to those people who say that degrees are useless?
I do not agree with that statement because I think the degree that we acquire actually helps build our thinking processes, to see connections, to see trends, and really for you to have good problem solving skills. Not everything that you learn in the university would be applicable.
Yes.
I mean, when I was in university, what I did in my working world was directly relevant because I was a teacher and I was teaching subjects which I learned when I was in university. But when I transit into the union, into the labor movement, while I do not utilize what I have learned completely, but you utilize the management skills, you utilize the thinking skills to actually make you better at work. And frankly speaking, I can see a difference between graduates, between poly students in terms of their thinking processes. Graduates, young graduates shouldn't be too concerned about being equipped with the relevant skills. I think many companies are very realistic. We know that not everything that you learn would be transferable into the working world, and that is the reason why good companies, good organization, they have put in place induction program, OJT training to make sure that you are equipped with the relevant skills to bring you up to speed. For graduates, for example, I do notice that because the nature of the task that they do is a bit more complex, they have to conceptualize, they have to do some planning, negotiation, communicating. Their learning curve can take between 3 to 6 months.
Okay.
All right, 3 to 6 months. And after 6 months, usually they could actually operate a bit more independently. But rest assured, don't be too concerned. Regardless of what degree that you have, if you can utilize what you have learned in your working world, that is a bonus. But even if you do not, it is not directly relevant, do something which you are passionate about, and don't be surprised that the thinking processes that you have acquired during your university days will be something which you will apply even in any working, in any sectors in the working world.
So concerning at least your university days, right? I know we are talking about how we won't learn tangible things, but in a sense of soft skills that you felt that you picked up in university that you felt that you couldn't have picked up anywhere else, right? What would it be in terms of soft skills?
I was from the education sector. I know MOE, we have done a lot in terms of equipping people with the soft skills. I think if there is something which I would have done, if I could actually go back into my university days, is actually to improve on my networking. So I give you example. Usually if you are from a junior college, if you are from polytechnic, or even if you are from university, they usually will have all these alumni gathering. My advice is go for these gatherings and reconnect back to those people from your JC, from your poly, or even from your university. These people most likely they would have done well in their career, and these are the network that you actually would like to build as well. But network should go beyond a professional network. I also believe that you should also build a network within the community because it makes you more human. It makes you more grounded.
You don't live in a silo?
You don't live in a silo. I have, for example, residents network in condos, and you'll be very surprised, even though some of the things that they organize are very simple activities. And based on their profession, some of them are lecturers in polytechnic, some of them are directors, some of them are managers. But even though you are in a committee, but it makes you more grounded to be able to serve the community. So when I talk about network, it is not just your professional network, but it is also improving your network within the community, because holistically that makes you a more all-rounded person. While you have good network at the professional level, your network at the community level will also give you a very good sense of what is happening on the ground.
So in a sense, just meeting lots of people who are different from you.
Yes. Yeah.
On that note, right, because I know for yourself you meet a lot of people during the Meet the People session, right? Can you just share with me how tough is it? Like, I don't know, like how tough is it needing to listen to so many people? Like, what challenges do you face in terms of absorbing everything and trying to sync a tangible message to, let's say, for a message that you want to say in parliament or these kind of things? Like, I just can't fathom, like hundreds of people see me every week. Can you just break it down for a layman, like a fresh young person like me?
In our role as an MP, as well as a grassroots advisor, contact with the ground is very important, because when we have good contact with the ground, you are able to see the impact of the policies on the ground, what works, what doesn't work, if the policy needs tweaking, needs improvement. And these are the things that we would actually then raise in parliament through our parliamentary question, through the budget debate, asking for things to be done differently so that it meets the need of the citizen. I just give you one example. I recall one resident came to see me. He was actually under CHAS, CHAS, where if he were to visit a private doctor, he would be eligible for some subsidy. But when the private doctor were to refer him for some laboratory test at a polyclinic, the polyclinic would actually charge him as a private patient rate without any subsidy. And I think there is a disconnect because in the first place, CHAS is means tested, and the doctor that the private clinic that he went to is CHAS approved. So I think any referral made to the polyclinic should still give the same should offer the same subsidy as if he were to go there directly. You see? So these are some of the issues which I raised in Parliament, which MOH have to take cognizance of and make the necessary policy changes. That is one tangible example. But I have to admit that meeting up with residents during Meet the People session has its ups and downs. Sometimes I actually do get frustrated when because of certain policies, it's a bit difficult to help the resident. I recall there was at one Meet the People session, one resident came to see me asking for making an appeal to use her CPF savings to pay her bank debt.
Bank debt.
Yeah,
that's tricky.
And this no, I mean
that's just no.
It's a completely no. See, then I have cases where residents applied for maybe.
But in such cases, then how do you respond? Like
so
it's so difficult.
So we have to offer alternatives. So
if I may ask, like how is the alternative then?
In that particular case, I did tell the resident the current policy will not allow your CPF savings to be to pay for your bank debt. And really one alternative is really for her to consider downgrading because her house is fully paid for and she's only living with her mother. So if she were to sell the house, downgrade to a smaller flat, then she could actually raise enough capital to pay off. But it is not an easy decision. I mean, that is something which I want to acknowledge. I also come across cases where residents sometimes they are taxi drivers or they might be Grab drivers and they get fined by traffic police.
How common is it?
Actually quite common. And the thing with traffic police is that I even filed a PQ. 97% of all MPs appeal with regard to traffic offences are rejected. The only successful appeal, the 3%, are only successful because those are offences committed in the event of a medical emergency. If it is not a medical emergency, it would be rejected.
I mean, they're just doing their job at the end of the day.
So these are some, and some of them they will see you repeatedly to.
I'm sure you've made some good friends, right?
To appeal. So at the end of the day, I think residents. I mean, when it comes to traffic offences, you just need to be more careful, and then decision making. I even have cases where residents come to see me wanting to sell their flat so that they could actually send their child for an overseas university. Sometimes I would advise them against it, because at the end of the day, I would advise them, let the child that you have work in Singapore. Let them save enough. Then if they have enough, they can go for part-time degree. There are alternatives.
Yes.
The thing is that at the end of the day, where the residents want to explore some of these possible alternative.
On that note, right, in my opinion, Singaporeans love to complain, right? I've worked overseas before. I've looked at markets like Philippines, Malaysia, right? When you look at the social media pages in general, just Singaporeans, there's a long list of complaints, right? What do you think of the complaint culture of Singaporeans in general? Being at the front of absorbing this, so many complaints.
I think there is this perception that Singaporeans like to complain. But I think if the complaint is genuine, I would see it as good feedback. All right, we shouldn't view it negatively because these are genuine feedback. There is a very thin line dividing what is a feedback and what is a complaint.
Okay.
And I always see a complaint which provides a constructive criticism as genuine feedback. All right. So I give you an example. Recently, I received an email from a resident staying in the block 530
I can see the
series.
specific, okay.
530 series. Complaining about a foul stench which he thought coming from the sewers.
Okay.
Right? I mean, he is complaining, but we investigated. But to me, it's a feedback. So when we investigated, it wasn't actually coming from the sewers. It's actually coming from the trees.
Okay.
So when the trees were flowering, unfortunately, the species is
man.
those species that gives a foul smell. So to me, these are very important feedback. But what would be complaints? Sometimes I see complaints where you know that nothing much
can be done about it.
But you keep on harping on it unnecessarily. So I give you one example. I have a resident. Sometimes they were complaining about, for example, littering. All right, and they say, how come this area is always dirty? It is not that the cleaners don't clean up the place. You see, unfortunately, you still find people doing littering, and I mean these are. I mean, we can take actions, but at the end of the day, some problem. If you don't own the problem, then it's not a problem to you. I recall there was one resident who keeps on complaining. Sometimes he sees people smoking while they are walking along the linkway. Okay. To me, at the end of the day, it doesn't affect you. I mean, what that guy did is wrong. But to expect NEA to come down and catch that culprit might not be a practical thing to do. But you will find this resident keep harping on it, wanting action to be taken. I mean, it's a wide range. But at the end of the day, I believe if you have traveled a lot, generally in Singapore, many things are working. Our system works on balance. It is always work in progress. We have to keep on improving, because as society grows, as society matures, expectation increases, and we have to keep on tweaking it to meet the times of the day.
Okay, so on this last questions about complaining or about meet the people session, can you just tell me just one more story that strikes out to you in your whole experience, right? Just one memorable story that you think is worth sharing, and perhaps if there are some lessons to be learned. And because people like you, there's really such a treasure trove of stories, So I'm just very interested to hear the kind of stories, that one story that struck out to you, to let's say maybe inspire, like to motivate you in the kind of work that you do, or just in general.
It's difficult for me to pinpoint any specific story lah. But maybe the most recent which give me the affirmation that what myself and my team is doing is the right thing. When I had a cleaner who is actually the operations executive, he came to see me because he saw me at the hospital, and he actually went to approach me and thanking me for what NTUC is doing to help uplift the wages of the cleaners. He himself shared with me that he started being an ordinary cleaner, but because of all the upskilling that he has done, he's now a father of 4 children, and he's holding a relatively good job as an operations executive. And I think that gives me the affirmation, this what myself and my team is doing is the right thing. I also have a similar affirmation when I meet with security cards. So I think that encompasses the work that I do in the labor movement. I think as an MP, as overseeing this constituency, it's still work in progress. There are some residents I'm able to help. There are some residents I'm not able to help. I mean, to those residents that I'm able to help, sometimes they come to my MPS to give me a cake or to give me some chocolates to show their appreciation. But I keep on emphasizing it is not my effort alone. It is actually the community effort. As a member of parliament, there are many things that I want to do, but it also requires me getting the buy-in from the volunteers. I want to be very frank. There might be residents who are happy with me. There might be residents who are frustrated because they see as things that they brought up, there are no follow-up action. But at the end of the day, I think it's still work in progress. I try my best to do what I can during my term of office.
Okay, Mr. Zainal, thanks so much for joining this podcast. I just have a short 5 questions, so basically short answers. What's the best advice have you ever received?
Networking.
What's the worst advice have you ever received?
Academic result is the most important thing.
Oh, that really? Okay, that's interesting. 1 year from now, it would be the best year for a career for the past 40 years. What things will need to happen to you to make it? What things would you want to achieve or would need to happen to make it the best year for your career thus far?
I would like to see more low-wage workers being helped through the progressive wage model.
Okay, thanks so much for joining me on this podcast, Mr. Zainal. If there's anyone who's interested in reaching out to you, how can they reach out to you? Meet the people session maybe, or
if they are resident of Pasir Ris-Punggol, they can come for they can see me at my Meet the People section, or simply email to me.
Okay, thanks so much, Mr. Zainal, and hope this podcast is interesting. I know it deviated from the original topic that we wanted to talk about, but Mr. Zainal, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much.